Welcome into One of One Sports. We're through with 2 weeks of college football already. It's time to do our week 3 predictions. Let's get into it. Speaking of Arizona, our first full game breakdown will be for this Friday night game between the Arizona Wildcats and the Kansas State Wildcats. So before we break down keys to the game, it's worth noting that in the preseason I picked Kansas State to win this game, but I picked them to lose against Tulane, which they actually were able to win. And I wasn't surprised because they were, technically supposed to win. But I did think Tulane would win the game, so I was impressed for kind of. And we'll get to that more in a second. But first, keys to the game. First one, I think the biggest key to the game, and we'll talk about this sort of like reverse situation here. I think Kansas State against Tulane looked like they could have some serious pass defense issues, right? Darian Mensah to Mario Williams was working really well. And it looked like there's some issues there. And I know against NAU, Fifita didn't look great, but you saw in New Mexico, player of the week, like 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, just unbelievable. I still think he's the best receiver in college football, and I think Fifita to McMillan connection's better than anything Tulane had on their team. That's not a shot at Tulane. I think Mensah's very good. I think Mario Williams is very good. I think they have good players there. It just speaks to how highly I think of Arizona duo of Fifita and McMillan. Like, I'm not sure. Maybe like a Brady Cook, Luther Burden's up there. Dylan Gabriel, Tez Johnson could get there, but just like I don't know if there's anyone I think has a connection like Arizona has to be as big of a threat. Like maybe like one of the toughest matchups Kansas State's pass defense could get is this Arizona duo. So I think that's the biggest issue, because if Arizona's just killing them through the air and there's nothing Kansas State could do, then Arizona can win this game. And then before we get into the reverse of that, it's just which version of Arizona are we going to get? Because in week one, or even, let's talk, first half of week one against New Mexico, offense is great. Defense really struggles. But McMillan, Fifita's great. So it's like, okay, it's kind of what we expect. Then the second half, the whole team's great. McMillan, Fifita look unstoppable. Defense is a lot better than it was in the first half. And they end up rolling, right? And it's like, oh, this team's very good. Then week two, they play NAU, and I was not able to watch this game, but I have friends who attended the game go to Arizona, and then I was following along, just trying to keep up, but I didn't have it on TV, so I wasn't able to watch it. But, there's a school of thought that Arizona's just, wasn't, they wanted to save stuff for the Kansas State game, didn't want to put it on tape in the NAU game, which I kind of buy. Like I said, I didn't watch it, but it was kind of more vanilla game plan, which I think is certainly possible. But even then, you should be able to put up more than 22 against NAU, and McMillan's got to get more receptions. And I know NAU, from like few plays I did see, that they were sending like triples, or there's always people all around him. But I mean, you've got to get creative in how you scheme things, or people should be wide open, then you should just put up way more points. So that was just weird, just really weird. And you got to have, for Arizona to win this game, you got to have the explosive, big McMillan game, high octane offense kind of Arizona that's also playing complementary football, because Arizona's run defense has been a problem. It was a problem against New Mexico, and given we're only 2 weeks in, but it was also part of the reason is it wasn't like you came to the season like, oh, Arizona's run defense is going to be good, and it's disappointed. We always knew this was probably an issue, and it's looked like it is an issue. Not against any, because again, the defense was good against NAU, as it should be. But Kansas State, with that DJ Giddens, Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, all potential rushing threats. If they're not stopping the run, then this what the game will look like. Oh, Kansas State, 5 yards on first down, 2nd and 5. Oh, 3 yards. Oh, pick up a third down. Avery Johnson scrambles. Now Arizona's loading up the box. Oh, they hit a good play over the middle. And then, Kansas State goes on a 15-play, 9-minute drive. And it's just, Fifita, McMillan, they aren't even getting the ball, right? So if this becomes a Kansas State, like 70% time of possession, or even like 60%, just keeping the Arizona offense off the field, even if it's very good, wearing out that defense, and it just kind of becomes like an attrition battle where Kansas State's just controlling the game and wearing Arizona out. I think that's the recipe for Kansas State to win this game. And then the final thing I have is Avery Johnson playmaking with his arm and his legs, because he's barely run at all this year. I think only 11 times. And I think I'm assuming he's going to run more because he is such a threat with his legs. He's so fast. I think you just got to use him that way. Because one, it'll open, because I don't think he's the best passer, but if he's making plays with his legs and you got to account for DJ Gibbons, then the passing game opens up and he's serviceable as a passer. And when a serviceable passer has more passing lanes open up, then you look like a good passer, right? I think that's what you got to do if you're Kansas State. So now we've broken out keys to the game. I'll give you my final score prediction. Full disclosure, like I said, I have friends who attend Arizona. I root for Arizona to win, and I hope I'm wrong about this game, but I think Kansas State will run the ball a little too well. I think Arizona will score. The offense will be fine, but I think they're off the field too long. Road Friday night game, don't like the spot. I think they wear down a little bit, and I think Kansas State wins it 30-27, and what I think is actually the game of the week on a Friday night. So make sure to tune in. I think this is going to be just my prediction, better than any of the games we have Saturday. But moving on, Alabama goes up to Wisconsin. We got the SEC, we got the Big Ten. I mean, it's great for college football, right? Wisconsin's not the biggest name, but two pretty big names, and not one of those neutral site games. It's an on-campus game. You just love to see it, right? Let's get straight into the keys to the game for this one. So I think biggest key is just Alabama's offensive line play, because I think if you guys watched the South Florida game, Alabama really struggled because Caden Proctor was out. That was really the reason. And then a sub comes in later on the O-line, plays instead of who they had in, and then they roll at the end of that game. I think the final score is 42-16, but it's tight the whole way through, and then the O-line gets it figured out, and then it's, Alabama's rolling. So it's really, I think if the O-line plays well, Alabama should be able to win easily. If the O-line struggles like it did in the South Florida game, we saw they struggle with South Florida, so you can probably struggle with Wisconsin as well. I think that train of thought or logic follows. So I think that's maybe the biggest key to the game. And then next up, I have Tyler Van Dyke's level of play. This is a game I don't really see Wisconsin winning. Spoiler alert. But if they were to win, I think it's got to be Tyler Van Dyke, game of his life. We're talking that first year at Miami where I remember ESPN having an article, Tyler Van Dyke might win a Heisman whether he likes it or not, I think was the title, something like that. Right after De'Aaron King was hurt, he came in, he played really well, and then he got all his hype for the next season. If he lives up to that Tyler Van Dyke and not the one we've seen these past few years with the turnovers, the lack of explosiveness, all the problems we've seen with him, and he's what everyone thought he could have been, and he has just the best game he's ever played, then maybe Wisconsin can win, right? But then the other thing, I want to give Wisconsin a fair shot here. So maybe they're saving something, right? Maybe against Western Michigan, they were saving some of their best plays for the Alabama game. Same with last week. Maybe it's all building towards this, and they know Alabama's coming to Wisconsin for big noon kickoff. We're saving it all for this one game because the offense hasn't looked good. And the thing with Wisconsin is just, I know under Paul Chryst, there was a hard ceiling because when you're starting guys like Alex Hornibrook, I'm forgetting who else, but I remember because Graham Mertz came in, it was a big deal that Wisconsin signed a big time quarterback. But you have all these quarterbacks who aren't very good, but you don't need to be because you're handing the ball off to Melvin Gordon or Jonathan Taylor or recently a Braylon Allen. Corey Clement was there, he made the NFL, and you have just studs on the O-line. I recently did an offensive line university short. If you guys want to check that out. Wisconsin's one of the best schools at producing O-line based off who's currently in the NFL. So at least, I think you knew you're getting 8 wins just off powerful run game, good O-line, fundamentally sound defense, and on your best years you get 10, maybe 11 wins. But you can never really beat Ohio State, or if Michigan wasn't really good during this time, but you get what I'm trying to say, because of the limits on the offense. So I get wanting to do something different, and maybe it'll work out in the future. But right now, all it's really led to with trying to do this air raid is that you lost what your old identity was and what you were really good at. So you're no longer this super physical ground and pound team, right? So you lost that, but you didn't gain anything. You're not explosive in the passing game. You didn't get better on the perimeter. So now you're just a team that lacks physicality and lacks explosiveness. So I don't know what Wisconsin is. I don't know what they're good at. So last key is just Alabama athleticism. But it's just I don't see a single thing Wisconsin's better at than Alabama. So let's just do the prediction. Maybe I'll be wrong. I've got Alabama 45-14. I think it's a blowout. I don't believe this Wisconsin team has what it takes to beat Alabama, who I think is going to roll. I think they're, since the end of the South Florida game, I think that momentum carries over. I just don't think it'll be close. Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see, but I'm very confident in Alabama. All right, next up, College Game Day. LSU heading to South Carolina. Not the most exciting College Game Day site, but hey, I'm still excited for the game. I'm definitely going to watch it. Let's get the keys to the game. So first up, I have what I think will probably determine this game, or definitely has the chance to determine this game. Who's to say if it will? Is this Garrett Nussmeier versus LaNorris Sellers turnover battle? It didn't end up hurting South Carolina against Kentucky because Kentucky's offense was so inept. But there's a throw where LaNorris Sellers way overthrows an open receiver, goes over him. Kentucky picks it off, and it was like, oh, like that's a big mistake. And if a play like that happens against LSU, that could lose you the game. Same with Garrett Nussmeier. He's got I didn't really watch the Nicholls State game, but USC, he made a mistake, but it's more of his reputation coming into the year. It was like kind of that gunslinger thing. And this is South Carolina defense that showed they can force turnovers, picked off Brock Vandagriff and Gavin Wimsatt against Kentucky. They could definitely force a turnover against Garrett Nussmeier. Turnover battle, I think, more so, it's always important, but I think in this game, with quarterbacks who I think have the potential to turn the ball over, either because they're young and inexperienced, which both are inexperienced. LaNorris Sellers obviously very young, or just because they might be a little overconfident in Nussmeier's case with the gunslinging. I think it could have a huge impact on this game. Next up, I think this Dylan Stewart versus Will Campbell or Jones matchup on the tackles. Dylan Stewart, true freshman, 5-star recruit on the edge for South Carolina, absolutely dominated Kentucky. They could not block him. But LSU, unlike Kentucky, has 2 projected first-round picks on the O-line. If LSU can neutralize what was such a big strength for South Carolina in the pass rush against Kentucky, now that South Carolina defense probably doesn't look nearly as good as it did against Kentucky, LSU put up more points. LSU could probably win the game. Next up, is this a Rocket Sanders breakout game? Remember at Arkansas, he was one of the best running backs in the SEC. Hasn't shown it yet this year at South Carolina. I think he will, though, at some point, because we know he's a very good running back, and I don't think he's washed. He's still in college. Maybe if he was in the NFL, 4 years into that's when running backs kind of wash out there. But I think it's coming at some point. It's just a matter of time. So it could be this game. I think if you're South Carolina, you really hope it's this game because this would be a huge win for you. And if he has a breakout game running the ball against LSU, you could definitely win it. Finally, it's the LSU receivers versus the South Carolina secondary. Because LSU's relied heavily on Kyron Lacy, South Carolina might be able to hone in on him more. And if the other receivers aren't able to get separation, make big-time plays, LSU becomes much, much less threatening offensively, especially when you don't have a running quarterback and your running back John Emery's out for the year. So your rushing attack's not as potent especially as last year, but even as you thought it would be this year. And if your passing game's not as potent, that could cause problems. So who do I have winning? I think it's a really tight game. I like South Carolina having the home field here. Early game, I think there's some edges there for South Carolina. I think the defense is going to keep them in it. I do think it comes down to LaNorris Sellers. I think he has some really good moments, but a couple of critical moments as it's a tight game down the stretch. I think Nussmeier is just who I trust more to make the smart plays, not make a mistake. I'm going to go LSU 24-21. I think it'll be really tight. I think it'll be a good game. I'm just leaning LSU, just barely. All right, just a couple more games to break down, and we've got actually an AP top 25 matchup with Boston College going on the road to face the Missouri Tigers. Missouri's all the way up to number 6. It's kind of crazy. Keys to the game, I think this Missouri defense, if you guys don't know, Missouri has not allowed a point all year. Shut out Buffalo and I believe Murray State, but obviously neither of those teams are very good. So that's why key to the game is how good is this Missouri defense that coming into the year, when I was evaluating them, I thought certainly had talent, brought in some good transfers, but you lost like your top edge rusher drafted by the Cardinals, top corner was drafted as well. You brought in 5-star defensive linemen. As freshman, don't know how much he'll impact early in the season. You bring in Toriano Pride, corner from Clemson. He's talented but young. So I had questions about the defense. So far, it's been great. Hasn't been tested, especially hasn't been tested a team as good or with as good of an offense as Boston College and a dynamic quarterback like Thomas Castellanos. And then the other key to the game for Missouri is this wide receiver core. I think Boston College defense, I think there's still questions, right, to be answered because Florida State was not equipped to really test them as well as we thought they would be in the preseason. Like by now I thought we would know how good is this Boston College defense. Don't think we do because I don't think they've faced a really good offensive team. And when you verse Missouri, who has Luther Burden, who has Theo Weiss, who has Mookie Cooper, all these options there at the receiver, and Brady Cook, who can run and distributes all these targets, it's a really tough offense to stop. Will Boston College be able to? I'm pretty skeptical of it. And then, this I mentioned earlier was just Castellanos' playmaking. Because I think Missouri's going to put up a lot of points on this Boston College defense, and their defense has been pretty good. I think Boston College, outside of just, I think got to establish a run game. But I think Castellanos has to have one of those games, which I've seen him have, where he's running it, and he's got to be accurate with the downfield threats too. Because if he keeps them honest, then that's when he can scramble, right? It's not one of like Avery Johnson at Kansas State, who I talked about earlier. I talked about he can run to open up the pass. Castellanos, you got to be able to show you can make those passes, and then it'll open up the run for you a little bit more. And I think you need to, because I think Castellanos got to have a huge game to keep up with Missouri to potentially pull this upset on the road. Final key, I think it's just Brady Cook ball security. There's been a couple games I've seen him play last year where he made a critical interception. And I think in this kind of game where Missouri's offense, I think, will be rolling for the most part. And I think you can give away momentum. Like if he has a red zone turnover, that can flip a game. I know Tennessee destroyed NC State and it wasn't close. But I think, say, instead of just hypothetically, right? Instead of Grayson McCall throwing that pick six, he throws a touchdown that play and it's 10-10 and the half's almost over. Even say Tennessee gets a field goal before the half, maybe even a touchdown, and it's a one-possession game going to the half. I bet you Tennessee doesn't win 51-10 after that, right? So it's just as long as Brady Cook is smart, doesn't turn the ball over, I think Missouri has enough of other edges where they should be fine. Will he do that? We'll see. My prediction, I think he does. I think his Missouri offense puts up points, and I think they end up winning it. I'm going to go with 31-23. Was tempted to go 38-23 and kind of like a late Missouri score type thing. But point is, I have Missouri winning by 1 to 2 touchdowns. I'm somewhere in there. I know it's a big gap, but, it's just like one play, really. But, yeah, got Missouri winning. Final game breakdown here. We got the Tulane Green Wave taking on the Oklahoma Sooners. I think it'll be a really good game. If you guys don't know, I predicted Tulane to make the playoff in the preseason. And if they get off to a 1-2 start, that prediction's not looking too good. So I'm rooting for Tulane here, kind of save a prediction of mine. But let's see if I think they'll actually do it for me. Keys to the game, it's the Oklahoma offense. I mean, I don't know what happened against Houston. That was just, Houston, I don't think is good. I think they're okay I think they're okay offensively, and I think Donovan Smith can do some good things. So it would have been one thing if it's like, Oklahoma won 27-24, and it was like, it was just Houston's quarterback was making plays, and the Oklahoma defense struggled a little bit. That would have been concerning, but not as concerning as putting up, 16 against Houston, including a safety? So that was just, I mean, the offense looked terrible. And now this Tulane defense, I think, is better than Houston's, but Jackson Arnold has to play much better. The receivers, who I thought would be a strength of this team, I mean, Deion Burks has looked good. I know Jaleel Farouk is out, but Nick Anderson I thought would be like one of the best number 2 options. I haven't really seen him do that much. And so I think the receivers got to be better as well. And then establish a run game. The O-line, I know, has a lot of question marks, but I think Gavin Sawchuk is talented enough to make plays, especially going up against these teams. Like, I know Houston's Power 4 now, but I don't think anyone thinks Houston's a great team. And Tulane, I think, is one of the best Group of 5 teams. But Oklahoma, even with the questionable offensive line, should be able to out-physical Tulane. So I look for a big week from this Oklahoma offense. Next up, Mensa ball security. Tulane, 1. I think they should have beat Kansas State, or at least gone to overtime or had a chance. I think the calls were terrible at the end of the game, but you can't really blame officiating when you have a scoop and score the way Tulane did that kind of completely threw off the game for you when you were leading like the whole time before that. So you can't have that kind of play, and you can't throw an interception in the end zone to end the game. You just can't. You can't have those kind of turnovers. And outside those turnovers, Mensa was awesome. I mean, this sneaky thing, Mario Williams returning to Oklahoma. Look for a big game for him. But he looked great. Hughes looked great. Mensa was slinging it. I mean, the offense looked great. I was really impressed. Even Ty Thompson came in for a run play, who I'm a big Ty Thompson guy, even though he's the backup quarterback at Tulane. And, he looked good on his one run. Just shout out to Ty Thompson. But I mean, Mensa looked really good, and I was prepared to name him one of the players of the week until the strip sack, run it back, and then end the game with an interception. If he can just do all he did, just play exactly what he did, and don't turn the ball over, and Tulane has a chance to win this game because the offense is really good, and even against a really good Oklahoma defense. Then, I already kind of touched on this. It's just that Oklahoma physicality on the line of scrimmage, because I don't really have questions about their defensive line. I'm pretty confident that they'll do a better job than Kansas State of disrupting the Tulane passing game coming off the edge, as well as stopping the run with that D-line and some of the linebackers they have there. I think they're better equipped to do that than Kansas State. But the O-line, I think, has more questions than Kansas State, and it's got to be better for me to fully buy into Oklahoma the way I want to. Not even just for this game, but with the games they have coming up, the O-line's got to be better. Next up, or finally, we have, is this the Jackson Arnold breakout? We know he's talented. We know they picked him over Dillon Gabriel. Maybe that was a fit thing, but I do think they thought Jackson Arnold would be a great quarterback. Now, I think he definitely can be. He's just a young guy. He's got to put it together. Can't turn the ball over, and has got to give these receivers a chance. I think definitely run, because he's a mobile guy. But I think look to pass a little bit more. Don't run as much. Hit guys downfield, and just play within yourself. Don't force anything. I think he could have a breakout game here, and what I think will be Oklahoma's toughest opponent yet. Maybe not their toughest game, because they were weirdly struggled against Houston. But who do I think will win? And although I'm rooting for Tulane to save my prediction of them making the playoff and only having one loss, don't think they do it. I think they play really well, put up some points, but I've got Oklahoma 30-23. I think this is a really good offensive performance for Oklahoma. Defense, I think, plays pretty well considering how good I think Tulane's offense is. But that's what I've got. Feel free to let me know who you guys have in this week's biggest games. Leave a like, subscribe. I thank you guys for watching. Until next time, bye.